Using Pinterest to build your empire with today's very special, very exciting guest, Leah Remillet.
Today's episode is brought to you by Canva. When we finally decided to grow our social media presence, Canva was the only option. I tried dozens of alternatives, but I had to admit that nothing else comes close. We use Canva for social images, print-on-demand designs, and tons more at Serve No Master. Grab a free account today at servenomaster.com/Canva.
Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss and start living your retirement dreams now, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Serve No Master Podcast, where you'll learn how to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host.
I'm very excited to have you here today, Leah, because this is near and dear to my heart. People know I've been talking a lot about Pinterest lately and figuring out myself. Looking at the statistics, I saw that the biggest growth area for Pinterest is men and millennials. It's 40% this year. So men are finally paying attention. After 15 years, they're going, oh, maybe there's something going on here. And I'm just as guilty. I'm one of them, starting to get really active on there. What I'd love to know is how you started your online journey, where it all began. Where's the beginning of your story?
Okay. So the very beginning, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs is you start with one thing, you think that's what it's going to be, and it evolves. You pivot, you adjust, and it becomes something totally different. So I started my entrepreneurial journey actually as a photographer. I wanted to have a lot of time freedom, wanted to be able to be home with my kids, all that kind of stuff. And over time, it shifted. What really shifted is that simultaneously, while I was trying to become a professional photographer, I decided to start this blog. It doesn't exist anymore. I started it like 15 years ago, but it was called Go for Pro before GoPro actually became a thing. And it was literally me going for pro. Like I was trying to figure out how to be a professional photographer. And there would be things that I would find. This is back like 2007, 2008. Blogging was such a different world. And so it wasn't at our fingertips the way it is today. I was scouring. And when I would find these things, I would think I cannot be the only person trying to figure this out, which I believe comes back to, I really believe when we give value, it makes the difference. And so I would share these things that I found. I'd write these articles and share them. And that started growing. In fact, over time, that became even more profitable and successful than my honestly very profitable photography business. And I'm like, well, this is great. I can do it from my home. And so I went in full-time teaching photographers how to build six-figure photography businesses and how to do it in a way that felt good and it wasn't competing with their family and everything else. And then in about 2015, I pivoted to really wanting to be able to help all kinds of entrepreneurs. I had made a huge focus on automations and systems and workflows and outsourcing and all these things so that I could work part-time hours and make a very full-time income. And I realized this isn't just for photographers. This is for anybody. I've now, I had built courses. I had built an online business. And so I made that shift in however many years ago that was now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I started my first blog in 2007, back when I thought blogging was your personal diary and no one could find it.
Yes.
And it's really shifted from, it used to be people would read a personal blog and read about your story, and it could even get turned into a movie. Like that one lady who's, I'm going to cook every recipe from Enjoy French Cooking, and that becomes a movie.
Julia,
and now
Julia, yeah.
It's so changed. Blogging is so tactical. Like when I write a blog post now, I have to do so much SEO and optimization and word counts and formatting, and you can't really enjoy it anymore. Like it's not fun. And that's one of the things that's kind of unfortunate, that shift. And I think you brought up something really important, which is the pivot. A lot of people think Leah's first idea worked. Jonathan's first idea worked. And he's been doing it for 13 years. And I wish that was true. Of all of my friends, only one of them, their first idea worked. Everyone else I know in any type of online business, it's like their seventh idea, their 57th idea. And it's really important to dial into that lesson, because we'll go to college, now college is like $200,000, 4 years there. And even if we don't get a job in that sector, we don't complain about it because we had such a good experience. And it's like, when I think about what kind of experience my kids could have for $200,000 each, like they could rock way more than 4 years of a good time. I think they could probably last 10 years on that each. So it's very much the way things are wrapped. And we in some areas accept, oh, your first idea is not going to work. Your first job's not going to work. You're going to hop different careers. But sometimes people think, oh, the first online business I try has to work. It has to work in the first 2 weeks. And it's really good that you brought up that your first idea wasn't a perfect fit. And also, I'm very interested because there's really two internets. A lot of my experiences, there's the internet I'm on. It's very masculine. It's very, here's how to make $174,000 with your first business online. And then there's lady websites, which are always nice. There's always the ladies drinking coffee. There's long socks. It's always long socks. There's often a cat. And it's like the house is very clean. And the color scheme is different. I buy a lot of products from ladies because they feel nice and they're different. They're a different approach, right? It's very marketing. Most of the marketing I deal with is very aggressive. It's very over the top. It's like going to change your life, even have to punch you in the mouth, where it's like many lady products, which I love, are like, you can make money and you can still be happy. You can enjoy the journey, which is very interesting. And it's very few people see both sides of it. So it's very interesting that you came from one side and broadened, because a lot of the careers or the businesses are like wedding planning, photography, house organizing or feng shui or interior design. All things that are useful.
Absolutely.
People often comment my background, 100% my wife. I can't make the tiles, even the hexagons. I can't do it. So even the most basic of things in straight lines, I once had a friend who built houses from scratch. And I went over his house and painted a white wall. And he goes, yeah, you can never help me again. I didn't know with one color paint, it looks so bad. I didn't know you could really ruin it. And he was like, listen, you can have a tool belt, but no tools. One of those things. So I'm very much not crafty or handy. So when you're transitioning through things and things stop working, what's that experience like? Because this is an important moment, because an idea will work and then you realize, oh, blogging's not working anymore, or I'm shifting in a direction, or I don't want to do photography in person. The challenge with photography is that there's always someone else to please. Like wedding photography sounds really romantic until the bride is shouting at you or something goes wrong, often outside your control. It's raining or something like that. I've seen those things from some of my friends who love photography at first until they realize that it's very high pressure in some situations. So what was it like when you go, you know what, I'm going to move from full-time doing to just transitioning into a teaching place, which allows me to be full-time online, allow me to spend more time with my kids. For me, I was selling SEO services in Nashville, and I go, I don't want to be trapped in Nashville. I want to be able to travel and move other places. So I shifted to only phone customers. I shifted to only people that were in different cities, so they didn't care where I lived. So what was that experience like for you?
So I started with the photography, and really I wanted entrepreneurship. And I think that's okay for some people to admit, to say, like, it wasn't that I was in love with photography. I had never picked up a professional camera before I said, I'm going to be a professional photographer. I just knew I wanted a business. I loved entrepreneurship. I was missing it. And I thought, this can be my vehicle. And so I started that business, and it grew incredibly. I was making six figures within the first 18 months, multi six figures within the first 2 years. And so, I mean, that looks awesome. But that's the thing. It looked awesome. And I want to just admit that, because I think it's important that we recognize that, yes, money is helpful and we certainly have financial goals, but there was also a lifestyle goal that I had, which is what you were just sharing, right? Like, you wanted this ability to travel. I wanted to be home with the kids more. I didn't want to have to be gone on Saturdays and realize that there was parts of having to leave the house all the time that I didn't like. Now, I worked to systemize and automate and outsource. I had people doing my sales appointments for me and my editing for me. And right. So I outsourced everything I could, but even still, I was like, I am not in love with this. And I am realizing that I actually think I'm even better at teaching than I am at photographing. I always joke, and I used to always say, I'd be like, if I can make six figures and I'm like a mediocre photographer, believe me, you all can. And so it was more exciting for me to get to show these primarily women, but these photographers how to actually make money. Like, they were the true artists and I had never been the true artist, and I wanted to show them how. So in recognizing that, I think really paying attention to how we feel in our processes. And yes, sometimes you're going to be like, this is not making money. Now, if it's not making money, there's two things. Either one, you have to adjust your approach. Maybe, something's off with your branding, or it's off with your marketing, something along those lines. Or two, it might not be money. It might be like, well, the money's here, but I don't I'm not enjoying this. I don't like the lifestyle it's creating. There are some careers that we're choosing that are literally they're synonymous with workaholic. Like you can't really be successful without being in that hustle culture 24/7. And there's a lot of us who are raising our hand and saying, absolutely not. I'm not going to do this. This is not what I wanted. This is not okay for me. And that's whether you're, coming off the 4-year degree, you get into a profession and they're like, okay, now we expect you to put in 90 hours every week or more, be available 24/7, right? So it can be in any sphere, but there's a lot of us looking at what we're being sold as the only way to get to success is to just outwork everybody else. And we're standing up and saying, no, that's not true. And my version of success looks like a lot of time freedom, still having that financial goals, but maybe I'm not trying to make 10 million, right? Maybe I'm going for something different so that I can have the lifestyle I want.
It's a really good lesson there because a lot of people, they just go, what do you want? Just a lot of money. But money doesn't buy you happiness. It buys you freedom and choice. It gives you the ability to choose where you live and who you have to listen to, what kids you can put your school. And it does give you some power. But some people think that I'll be happy if, which is a dangerous place to be in because I'll be happy if I'm making $10 a day. I'll be happy if I'm making $100 a day. And all that happens is when you hit that goal, you just change the number and You're in a perpetual state. Like when you have the stick on top of a turtle with a carrot hanging from it. So you can never actually catch it. The carrot just keeps getting bigger and heavier on your back. So I love that you're talking about that. Now, when a lot of people go through an imposter syndrome, when they shift from doing to teaching, this is very common. This is the most common email I get from people, which is, well, how can I teach it if I'm not still doing it all the time, right? How can I teach photography if I'm not taking pictures every single day? And there's this fear people have that they'll get called out for authenticity. And it's in every single market I've ever operated in. And people often will email me and say, oh, you're talking about a course today. Do you do that? And I'm like, I don't do every single business model. It's impossible, right? Does everyone who sells private airplanes fly in a private airplane? So there's different components of it, which is for me as an affiliate marketer, my job is to detect if a system works, to see, is the person ethical? Do they honor their refund policy? Is there a catch in the back end? Is there something about it that doesn't work that people won't figure out in the back end? Is the person have a reputation as a good person? Do I know people who've been through the program and actually made money from it? Like there's all these things that I have to check because I've looked at hundreds of sales pages and 99% of them don't work. Like I don't show most things to my audience. That's my job is to screen out, not to screen in. But when went through that transition from I'm doing photography all the time to I'm just teaching photography, did you go through a moment of that feeling of, oh, now I'm not really doing it? Do I really have the right to teach it when I'm not still doing it all the time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all deal with those kind of feelings. So I started, you start with your first thing and then you got to start putting yourself out there to get the next opportunities. And that's the first place where you're going to have the imposter syndrome. The first place is when you start pushing to get those bigger opportunities. So for example, I wanted to start speaking. I had been doing, but this is back like when webinars were new. And so I was doing these paid webinars, right? Like people could sign up for $249 and they could learn some component of how I structure my business. And then I was like, gosh, I want to share this on a stage. And I remember, putting out those first applications to speak at conferences or even getting an invite and having all the feelings of like, oh, who am I to think that I can do this, right? And that's what comes up. It's the who am I to? And honestly, I think the biggest shift that you can make to overcome that imposter syndrome is if you care about the people you serve, if you truly believe that you can help them, then who are you not to? Then it's selfish. It's unfair of you to leave them questioning and unsure and sitting in this confusion when you have the answer. And so that's really where I try to come from. Anytime imposter syndrome tries to show up, I ask myself, like, do you know you can help them? And when I'm like, heck freaking yeah, I know how to do this. Like, I know if they put in what I tell them to do, I am positive that they will love their results. Then in that case, who am I not to share? And so that's how I try to kind of deal with and push those feelings out. And even switching from, I got known in the photography industry. And then I wanted to shift over to helping all kinds of entrepreneurs. And I'm going into this new industry and I felt, all those feelings came back because, I'm known in this one. I'm recognized. I can say, hey, I want to speak at this. And like, oh my gosh, we'd love to have you. Now I'm in this new thing where they're like, who the heck are you? Right. And I had to sell myself. And that can be awkward. I remember writing this email. There was this conference. I really wanted to speak at it. Like I got this email of like basically inviting me to participate, to buy a ticket. And I had this overwhelming feeling of like, I need to be there and I need to be speaking there. And I knew they had no idea who I was. Like this was right when I had transitioned. And so I'm like, I send this email. I'm like, this is going to be the strangest email you're going to get today, but I hope it at least entertains you. And I sold the crap out of myself. I'm like, I have done this, 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 and this. And I was like, this is so tacky, but I knew I wanted this and I was going to go for it. And no response at all. And I had this feeling of like, no, follow up. And so I did. And that is one thing, like, we're just going to kind of go on a side tangent for a second. We have to always be willing to follow up. This is something that I teach over and over and over. Whenever you're trying to put yourself out there, expect they are not going to reply. Just expect it. That's just what's going to happen. Doesn't mean anything against you. It is what it is. And so just plan to follow up. And so I followed up again and I'm like, I don't want to bother you, but just in case this slipped and I get this email back that's like, I'm so glad you responded. I had actually just had eye surgery and we looked into you. We think you're awesome. Actually, we want to invite you to be our keynote speaker. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, I went from so many feelings of imposter syndrome, feeling embarrassed to even send this email, more embarrassed to respond when like, maybe I'm clearly being ghosted because they're like, who the heck are you? And I'm going to respond to then get this incredible opportunity, which led into so many more opportunities. So, just this willingness to be brave, it's that, I think Mel Robbins says, right? Like 5 seconds of brave, right? Like just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you just make yourself do those things because the opportunities, the success, the things we're hoping for, they very well could be just on the other side of those 5 seconds of bravery.
A lot of times when we send someone an email and they don't reply, we imagine it's that moment in A Knight's Tale when he falls over and the guy goes, you've been drawn, measured, and found wanting. Like the worst thing you can say to someone. But 99.9% of the time, it's that life got in the way. It's so rarely that. Even for me, like I've had to, for a project, something similar to that, I had to email the person 13 times. I'm emailing the head of their JV things. I'm emailing his wife because she'd emailed me once to send a payout. I'm sending everyone at the team. And I was like, let's just get it working. And you have to let go of the embarrassing because the more busy someone is, like even for me, sometimes people send me an email, especially a long email. What do? We get a long email. We go, I gotta think about it.
It goes straight to unread. You're like, you see it. And that's its own tip. Like, stop sending long emails, people. Stop. Give, short paragraph. You can always send more information once you've gotten them to reply once. So the first one needs to be as short as it can possibly be with enough information to get them what they need. But yeah, every single one of us, we see one of those, like it's a novel and you're like, it got moved right back to unread. I'm going to try to get to it later.
And that's exactly it, is that we think, they have judged me. It's like, no, you say that thing. It's the same thing when you send someone like a long text and they go, I got to think about this. And then you forget because that's exactly what happens. That happens to me all the time. So being comfortable with the uncomfortable, being willing to go outside your comfort zone, because people say that to me all the time. It's like, well, how do you get these opportunities? It's like, just tell everyone.
Yeah. I asked for it.
Yeah. Ask for what you want. And I learned that lesson. I read that in college and I was helping someone move. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing with this PlayStation 2? And the wife's like, you can have it. I don't want to playing it anymore. Looking back now, I realized I did a terrible thing. But it was like, they just had another baby. She's like, we have another baby. There's no time for that. And they gave it to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, people give you stuff when you ask. And the same thing, people ask me for things. It's so often that we're so afraid of asking. But if you don't ask, you get nothing. If you ask and I say no, you also get nothing. There's no downside to asking.
Right.
And it's really important to push yourself a little bit because most of the success does not come from brilliance. It comes from consistency. It comes from just do it every day, put in a little work every day, move the ball forward a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. It's not these huge, I posted a video, went viral. No one's first video goes viral. No one's first project changes everything. And so that's a really good lesson. I love that you're talking about that. A lot of people just assume that at a certain level of success, imposter syndrome goes away. But even where I'm at now, every single time I'm interviewed on a podcast, I'm always thinking, what if they ask a question that I don't know the answer to? That's always, that fear never goes away. And then I'll look like an idiot and they'll be like, I knew it. You didn't know anything. How dare you come on my show? Like you create this higher scenario, right? That no one would ever do because I've had people on this show that I'm not going to release the episode, and I don't do that. I just go at the end, I go, you know what? Something went wrong. We don't like each other. This only happened once. That one happened. I was like, we don't like each other. It's not going to work. Something went wrong with our personalities. And no one wants to start a big confrontation. So it's okay to have these feelings because everyone feels imposter syndrome and then thinks they're the only one, when it's ironic because it's the most common fear everyone has. Everyone feels it at every level. So I love that you're sharing that story. So what I'd like to talk about now is how you transitioned into really using Pinterest to drive like a lot of traffic. I know you're getting 250,000 views a month, which is very impressive. Can you tell me a little bit about your process? Like I've looked at a lot of your pins. I noticed that you have like 5 pictures that you just reuse. And I love that. A lot of people think I have to take a new picture of myself, new picture of myself, new picture of myself.
Oh gosh,
to constantly reinvent. So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics or the process or your approach to it from a systems level.
Absolutely. Okay. So let me start by saying Pinterest is our number one driver to my website, hands down. When we look at our analytics, 98% of the traffic coming into my website is directly from Pinterest. So I want to tell everybody that because I really believe in Pinterest, right? I'm not a huge fan of I am the queen of balancing busy, right? My podcast is called Balancing Busy. Everything I do is helping people to have more time to do less, but better. And so I see social media works for some people. Let's just be honest. Like some people are killing it. They've got that influencer status. They know how to make those reels right or whatever it is. And it is driving traffic. I have been on social media from the very, very beginning. And I have, it's okay. I have 12,000 on Instagram, 20 something on Facebook. So it's okay, but it's not amazing. And it's not where I want to spend my time because it is just this time suck. And so me being someone who is all about less, but better, like where can I get the most bang for my buck? I heard, some things about other people using Pinterest. I was really fascinated. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see what I can do with this. And so I think that was 4 or 5 years ago that we really started making a concerted effort to really work with Pinterest, and it has been phenomenal. Now, I've been pinning from forever. Our number one pin, hands down, that's something I really love about Pinterest. As you're looking at your analytics, you can see which pins are working best. Hands down, the number one pin is a freebie that I created in 2009. Like, hands down, that is still the number one generating pin. And then the second one is a collection of pins, but they're all around the exact same thing, which is my office makeover that I did for a magazine in 2015 or 2014. And so one of the things about Pinterest that's really cool is that your pins have longevity. So when we're posting on other of our outlets, it has a short shelf life. It's going to be there and it's going to be gone. But with Pinterest, it's like when it's the right kind of pin, it will continue to work for you for years and years and years, which is incredible. So I love systems. So everything we do has a system. I actually call them BOBs. So if anyone coming from the corporate world, you are familiar with SOPs, and that's standard operating procedure. I don't believe anything should be standard. I believe we should be trying to make things as incredible as possible and always be ready to innovate and be looking like, how could I make this even better? And so BOB stands for Best Operation Breakdown. And they are Google Docs that my entire team has access to. They're evolving all the time. And it's every single step of any process that we do on duplicate. And so we have an entire system. But ultimately, within Pinterest, we're using a system called Tailwind. And so Tailwind is where we're doing all of our scheduling. We're using Canva. Okay. There's a free version of Canva. And what I've done is we've created a handful of templates. So a lot of people make this mistake of they think exactly what you said. They think I need to create a brand new pin every single time, a brand new graphic, and it's going to have brand new everything. No. First of all, that's going to take extra time. And our whole goal is to do less, but better. So what I've done is we've designed a handful, maybe a dozen designs. And every once in a while, my Pinterest manager goes a little rogue and I'm like, wait, go back to the ones we have. Stop trying to create new things. I want us to just use those same graphics. So it's kind of the same colors. They adjust a little bit, same fonts. I also want that because we need brand consistency. You want people to get to a point where they see a pin and they're like, oh, that must be a Leah Remillet. That must be Balancing Busy podcast. And so we have these templates that we're reusing. We put in the new images, and it's a combination of, I'll do brand shoots every once in a while, hand them all the images, use whichever ones you want whenever, or it's stock images that we have. We have, several different memberships for different stock things so we can grab them. And we're just putting out these different pins. So for a blog post, so the way that I'm blogging is I'm literally blogging for Pinterest. And the way that I see Pinterest is I see Pinterest as a search engine. So especially me being a woman who loves beautiful things and it can be very creative minded. If I'm trying to find something, I would much rather search Pinterest than I would Google, because I'm going to see pretty pictures, and those pretty pictures are going to help me to know what I want to click on. And I am not alone there. There is a lot of us who we love Pinterest and we're using it as a search engine. So that's one of the first things. Anyone who's like, okay, Pinterest, I'm thinking about getting into it. How would I do this? First, you need to realize that you're looking at Pinterest as a search engine. So it being a search engine, I'm thinking, what question does my ideal customer have that I could answer? That then can be a blog post. So the blog post is ultimately the answer to the question. Then I'm creating pins, multiple pins for each post, and we're going to pin them to different boards and try to get them circulating. Plus, we can then see which ones are producing the best results. We can duplicate or refine or try just a slightly different version of that one. Kind of the same way someone would do Google ads, right? Like they're going to go, oh, this Google ad's really performing, so I'm going to duplicate that ad and just adjust a little bit and see what I can do with it. And that one's doing terrible, so we're not going to try to make that one again. So we're making multiple pins that work around that question. We'll, try different hook lines, try all kinds of different things, get those circulating, and they're all driving to the blog. Now, my ultimate goal for Pinterest, hands down, is my email list. And we always have to know, what is the end game? What is that CTA, that call to action? And so in my case, it is, I want them, two things. Either I want them listening to the podcast or I want them joining the email list. But my real goal is joining the email list. Why? Because if they're on my email list, then I can keep reminding them about the podcast. Whereas if they come listen to one podcast episode, that's awesome. But if they didn't subscribe a few weeks later, like, who was that girl? That was really good, but I can't remember. And I'm gone. I'm out of sight, out of mind. And so this idea of really trying to drive to our newsletter is my number one goal. So that was a 10. Tell me which direction you want me to take it from there.
Yeah, I love all of that. The thing that I found, I got really bullish on Pinterest about 6 weeks ago. I was like, I get 2,000 views a month. And I was like, let me see what happens if now that making pins is easier. In the past, it's like a lot more complex. Now I can generate an AI image for each pin very quickly. Totally. And once I find a style, I just reuse it over and over again. I can have 10 templates in Canva that I found from other people's boards. I go, I'll try 20 of these, see which one kind of works for me and try the different designs and then make it my own. And then I just constantly reuse it and just post 5 or 10 pins a day, like not even a crazy number. And I went from 2,000 to 7,500 in 6 weeks. And I missed 2 weeks. I was sick in the hospital for a week and a half, and it was still growing. What I've noticed is that it's very arithmetic. Like I always want it to like double, double, double. It doesn't seem to do that for me. And even when I talk to other people, I'm like, yeah, you can grow. But if every single month you increase your views by 7,000, at the end of a year, you've increased your views by 90,000. That's a huge difference. And that's monthly views. So I also notice that you're rewarded. My old pins get more views when I post a new pin. So that's the second thing I noticed. And the third thing that's really important is that Pinterest always asks you, well, where do you want this pin to link to? Every other social media platform is like, don't put a link. You can have one link in your bio. We want to keep people on platform. Pinterest is very interesting in that it sends people away. And as I mentioned earlier, I love that it grows. Every year it grows 7.5% for the last 10 years. It's the little engine that could. So when I look at statistics like that, I see that consistency. Whereas sometimes I can have a video go viral on TikTok, get 750,000 views, which is awesome. And then the video gets taken down, right? It's all these complexities and it's always a challenge. And it's what have you done for me lately? It's very hard. The algorithm's constantly changing. Whereas Pinterest is like, listen, do a little bit, we'll give you a little bit. Do a little bit more, we'll give you a little bit more. And there's this reward for consistency over anything else. And it's very interesting that, because I ask a lot of people that, I was like, am I doing something wrong that I'm just growing a little bit? So every time I post a pin, maybe every day I notice my monthly views goes up 1, 2, 300. Some weeks it just goes up a couple hundred here and there, and it's not a lot, but it's always this trajectory. It's always going up. And learning that the design matters, where you point pins matters, what you write on the text matters, that there's SEO to it. Because I have a blog that just doesn't, SEO from like Google is so hard. Your content has to be bad because it has to be completely optimized in a way that makes it unpleasant for people to read.
And I wasn't willing to do that. Like, I'm like, I mean, when you're thinking about, and some people just, I have a client and she is killing it with her SEO and she writes them, exactly how you're supposed to. They're insanely long and it's working. It's bringing the traffic and everything. But again, I think this is where you have to know your customer, right? Like, I am literally speaking to people who are too busy. They are feeling frantic. They are feeling overwhelmed. They need simplicity. They need me to show them how to make their business simpler so that they can stop feeling like they're sacrificing their home and their health and their happiness. If I go write a novel of a blog post with, 1 billion words, so it's all SEO optimized, I am like doing them the biggest disservice.
I think that's something really critical. One of my mentors once said to me, he goes, I would pay 10 times as much for a 1-page product that gave me one trick that would make me more money. He's like, I don't want to read. And now we think whenever we're creating a course, we go, it has to be more hours. It has to be more hours. Whenever I buy a course and I go, please be short videos, please be short videos, please be short videos, please be short videos. We want that brevity. It's so important for us. So I think that we always think that when we're creating, we think the person wants long. And when we're watching, like I'm at the age, when I hit 40, I was like, every movie, my wife hates Star Wars, but I go, but it's a tight 90 minutes. Every movie, I'm like, is it longer or shorter than Star Wars? Like we just watched the shark movie today that was 2.5 hours. I was like, this is a commitment. I felt like the movie was longer than my marriage. And I just don't have this time to sit there and work through it. And that's the thing we forget, that brevity is so valuable. We always think that longer is better. Like if someone's book is 500 pages, I need to be 600. And it's this escalation, this arms race. And unfortunately, that's really where search engines have pushed it. My best blog post was how to start a blog. And it was like 3,000 words. And now it has to be 15,000 words because that's what the SEO wants. And he goes, oh, you have to have at least 50 images. And it's a nightmare for traffic. You can't really be yourself. And it's so much hope. What's interesting about Pinterest is that it happens day one. It happens right away. That they'll start to give you a little bit of traffic and that they reward consistency, which is the best way to run a business. Because a lot of people are like, I'll just post 5,000 pins today and then just let it ride for 2 years. But
and that's where Tailwind comes into place. Because with Tailwind, then you can schedule, right? So, and you can have pins, like your best pins circulating where they're being repinned, maybe every 8 to 12 weeks or something along those lines. And so that's where using a platform like Tailwind is so, so helpful because I'm a big believer in batching. I don't want people sitting down every single day being like, oh, I got to work on my Pinterest. No, you're running a business. There's a lot of things you have to do. Well, first of all, I'm going to say outsource it completely. That there are things that we do that are CEO work and there are things that we do that are assistant teamwork, and creating pins and doing all that is assistant teamwork. So outsource it. But for those who are not ready to outsource, or like me, I really like to explore things myself first because I'm not going to train you or teach you when I don't know how to do it. So I want to figure out what works for my business, my style, and then I'm going to turn around and outsource it and let somebody else take over. And then of course, I'll just say there's also when you just get the expert who knows better than you and you're like, I don't want to have to learn. I want to just hand it to you. You do it for me. But with creating your Pinterest plan, what I would suggest to everyone is that you are sitting down and batching. Now, for anyone who has a ton of blog content, go back and use what you already have. You do not need to be making fresh content. You need to be making pins that are going to go be pushed out that are linking back to the content you've already created. So that's incredible because for anyone who's been around for a while, I mean, I have a plethora of freebies and different things we've created over all these years. I have, all the different podcast episodes. I have all the different blog content. And so when we first started our Pinterest strategy, several years ago, I'm like, okay, here is everything I want you to make pins for and to push, and let's go. And so that's another thing to think about is just, you probably already have content there that you can use for Pinterest. Then you're going to sit down and you're going to batch. So, you're going to sit down for 2 hours and just make as many pins as you can. then get as many of them scheduled and rotating. And then you'll come back in a week or 2 weeks because you're like, perfect, I've got 2 weeks worth of stuff done. I'm going to, and the goal would be to eventually get yourself ahead. So I don't like ever doing anything in real time. Like everything that we're doing is always for several weeks in advance, because the joy gets sucked out of your business when you're having to do something in real time urgently. Like it just does. If I'm like, crap, I've got to get, everything ready for the podcast because it goes live tomorrow. It's not even remotely as enjoyable as when I'm like, oh, we've got 4 weeks scheduled, completely ready. I'm working on and refining one that's for next month. And so anyways, I just going to give that little caveat that I really love batching, getting several scheduled out, and then working to get myself ahead of the game.
A lot of people run just-in-time businesses, which is every day I have my list of tasks for the day. And I've never finished a whole day's task list. And I've been doing this for 13 years.
No one ever does.
So it's interesting what you say, because my approach was it's the least stressful part of my day. So I was like, every day I do Pinterest for 1 hour to start the day. Then I do my harder work. And I did that for the past 6 weeks. And last night I finally hired someone to take it over. I go, here's the templates that are working for me. Here's kind of a design, because I don't want someone to come in exactly and play design bingo. I was like, here, I'll give my exact Canva templates because these are the looks I like. I said, if you want, here, I have tons of images uploaded from my AI generator that are the images styles that I like. I have an aesthetic that I like that I'm kind of testing and that works for me. And all of that helps. And I was like, I don't really want to hire someone because I like doing it. But at the same time, there's a lot of things like repinning, like circulating pins, a lot of things you're saying that are outside my skill set, because I like just-in-time pinning just because I go, oh, what am I going to do today? I'll pick a random blog post, make 5 pins for it, scheduled for the next week. So I'm not methodical enough for it because I don't take it that seriously, because I'm enjoying it, because it's like, oh, this is the fun part of the day. But at a certain point, you have to push it down. I was trying to do it with my male VA, and he's so bad at Pinterest. He just like bad images.
I'm going to just say, yeah, 100%. I think you got to go female.
And yeah, I hired a lady. I was like, to do one picture, because he's a great video editor. And I was like, how come you're so bad at Pinterest and you're costing 4 times what a full-time Pinterest works, because I'm paying you per hour. You've been doing so long. So I was like, this is not going to happen anymore. We got to shift here. So it's important for me, before you hire someone, to have a sense of what kind of results you want. Like I said, okay, what am I going to get? Where am I going to be in 30 days, 90 days, 180 days if we work together, so that I don't get mad, right? Manage my expectations. When I hire someone, I want a sense of what's possible, right? And I was like, and I was like, well, how many monthly views? And she goes, well, I don't do monthly views. I do clicks to your website. And I was like, well, now you're speaking my language. I'm already excited by that, because obviously that's the profitable metric. And she gave a really good number that was not crazy. She was like, I can triple where you're at right now in the next month or two. And I was like, okay, that's reasonable. It's not crazy. Because the thing is, we're so used to platforms like TikTok is feast or famine. Either 200 people watch your video or 2 million people watch your video, and there's no middle. So we often get trained by social networks, and we think follower counts are so important, which nobody follows you on Pinterest. Nobody follows me on Pinterest. I looked at your account, you're getting 250,000 views a month, and you have like 87 followers, because that's not how people use the platform, because it's not a social media network. That's a misnomer. It's so important to understand that it is
not a social media. Yeah.
And I grew up using MySpace, and MySpace, they claim about why they went out of business. It's because your profile became more than 50% ads. So your page became worse and worse and worse until there was more ad than non-ad. And that was when I was like, oh, that's when everyone left. Everyone left at the same time. There's just too many ads. I don't want my profile to be all ads. And in the same way, most search engines are aggressive with lots of ads for stuff that you don't want. Just hard to get the result you want more and more. That's why now people are switching to asking AI questions, because there's not going to be an ad in the middle of it. So there is this market shift where we go, I just want something that, like you said, it's going to look nice. It's very interesting to see how the search engine works. I'm not a heavy user from the user side, but that's because I hate the internet. Like if it wasn't my job, I would never be online. There's this, I think, big misnomer that people think, oh, if you have an online business, you love online. And it's like the exact opposite. It's like, no, when I'm not working, I don't want to work. Like I would never put a video game in my work computer, because that's crazy to me to mix those two worlds. Even my wife and I were talking about it, because we haven't owned a TV for years. And I was like, let's buy a TV. So when we watch a movie, because I would never connect my game system I don't like watching movies on the computer either. We did it today, and the keyboard is sticky. I'm like, oh gosh, which kid did that? It's making me crazy. But you have to have these delineations in areas of your life. So it's very important to separate work from play, especially when you're at home. which is kind of the next thing I want to talk about. There's this revelation that happened. And the first one I experienced was about 6 years ago. There were a lot of travel bloggers. And when travel bloggers made enough money that they could start traveling, they all went out of business because they could not go to Machu Picchu and then blog. They could not stay fastidious. So the secret to my business is that I work 7 days a week. Like my dad gave me this piece of advice. He goes, listen, don't work more than 6.5 days a week. I was like, oh, that's where I get it. That's workaholic advice, right? Like only two workaholics are going to be like, take off 3 hours a week. Obviously, I have a system where I work shorter hours so I can spend more time with the kids. That's why I'd rather work every day shorter than 5 days longer. But I'm always amazed by people that don't work on weekends. I don't know how they do that because I always get an emergency email on a weekend.
You say that and it makes me like, I'm like, why? Like I have not worked on a weekend in years and years and years. Like, yeah, I'm like, huh.
Well, I live on Vacation Island. Where I live, everyone comes here for 3-day vacations. So every day, one of my rules is if the kids ask me to swim, I always have to say yes. So one of my rules is that. And that if the kids ask to sleep in the room, I say yes, but I make them be off camera because it's their choice when they're older to decide if they want to be famous or online or whatever. I don't want to make that decision for them. But I like that they're here most of the time until they start fighting. Sometimes I'll be shooting a video and they'll start fighting each other. And that's the one thing I can't handle because I can't stop them. I'm on camera. So that's kind of how I structure. But it is very important to structure what works for you. And a lot of people, they freak out when they go, I work on weekends. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also always on vacation.
I totally agree. Because one of the things I think that's so incredible is that we get to choose our own schedules. That's one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship and having an online business. And so, if you're working a few hours and you're able to do it before the kids wake up or whatever that looks like, or after they go to bed, but it's every day. And there's another mom out there who's like, okay, well, I need mine. For years, mine was like, I needed it to fit while my kids were at school. And so it was like, I didn't want them to feel me working. And so when I got them off to school and then I worked until they came home from the bus and there was never any extra in addition to that. And then, and the thing is, our lives are going to keep shifting. They're going to keep changing. So my schedule has changed dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the years because I started my business with 3 babies who none of them were in school yet. I now just took my oldest to college last week. So we have shifted dozens of times throughout the years of like what works for me and what works best for our family.
Yeah, it's important to understand that it's different for everyone. So we lived on a different island for years where I only had internet from midnight to 6 a.m. So you have to shoot your videos and do that kind of stuff when there's no internet. And when the internet's on, you got to upload them all. So people are like, how do you do that? I was like, well, my kids live in paradise. We live in one of the biggest surf spots in the world. My kids have this amazing life. Now we live in a different place because there's a really good school here. But it's always this decision. You have to make these different decisions of what is right for me, what's right for my family. And for example, I like to shoot these videos at night because it's convenient for people in America and because it's convenient for the kids. They're asleep, so they don't see it. And that allows me to get certain things done. And I still spend time with them. I'm still there every morning when they have breakfast before school. I still hang out with them when they get home from school. So you have to, again, as we talked about at the beginning, decide what you really want. So a couple of years ago, I started using an office that was 100 meters from my house. And I was so efficient. I've never gotten more work done. I would walk over there at 7 a.m, come back after dark. And I was like, I'm an idiot. What am I doing? I live on the beach and I never see it because I've created this really, really stupid scenario where I give up all the goodness, right? It's like we sometimes think, oh, this is what I should do. Like I should rent an office space or I should rent this or I need to have a team. And one of the things that I want to bring up is a lot of people talk about now because they go, oh, I want to work from home or I have to go in the office 2 days a week. And there's a huge difference to me because there's one person who works from home. I'm going to work every day. Like I'm going to get my job done. I don't take long days off. I'm going to get work done. I'm in the hospital. I'm still sending messages back and forth. I'm still running the business. And my wife doesn't work. We have 4 kids. She's very busy. But some people, especially people kind of that are work from home employees, like one company just said when they have to come back to work and 50% of their employees quit. I feel like there's the employee who they're wearing pajama bottoms, right? They're kind of thinking when you get paid based on time, not performance, you don't have the pressure behind you. And this is why I mentioned the travel bloggers. Some people do not have the self-motivation, whether you call it gene or training or whatever it is, the consistency, the fastidiousness. And I went through a period myself before I had kids where I was like kind of coasting because I had a huge year. I was able to live off that for the next 2 years. But once I started having kids and they want breakfast every day, they want to go to school every day. The school's always sending me bills for new things. sent me a huge bill for the bus. I was like, can you just put it into the tuition? Like, why do you always have to have these extra bills? And they're like, oh, your kid chose soccer for his elective. That's extra. So it's always happening, right? There's always someone wants money. The baby wants new diapers. Everyone's hungry. So there's this pressure to perform that motivates me, right? I operate well in that environment, but many people who are thinking about starting an online business, they don't realize it's still a business, right? You still have to work hours. You still have to put in time. You still have to pay attention. You still have to either manage staff or manage tools or figure out how you're going to deploy your time, figure out how you're going to deploy your employees' time, figure out how you're going to be efficient. And I feel like those are the people who are the most likely to fail because they think, oh, online business equals easy.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, it might be a different kind of hard, but it's still hard. And one of the biggest things that we have to do is we have to just shift so it's Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth Revisited, like super old classic, right? But he talks about, and I remember this sticking, it was one of the first business books I ever read about like, you cannot think like a manager or like an operator. You have to shift and think like a business owner. And it's, you gave such a beautiful example of this. You were enjoying doing Pinterest. It was a little creative outlet. It was like the easiest part of your day, but you recognized that in order to protect your time, which is your greatest asset, and you need to be pushing that time to income producing activities, that was something that was better off delegated to somebody else so that you could protect your time in places that were going to produce better results. And so as we're looking at how we spend our time and what we're doing, this idea of just really, really needing to focus on what is going to get us the results that we want. And I think so many people start their business and they're doing what's fun. They're doing the creative stuff. They're doing the stuff that they really enjoy. They're, being the manager or they're being the operator. And so, let's take someone who maybe has a videography business or a photography business, right? They're spending all the time shooting and that's the part that lights them up. But there's an entire side of their business that needs to be focused on that so many people miss. It's the difference between working in your business and working on your business, right? The in your business are the things that have to be done that day. They're the deadlines. They're taking care of the clients. The on the business are the things that are actually going to move that needle. They're going to move your business forward. They're going to get you into that next realm that you're excited for and think could be possible. But if we never schedule the time to work on our businesses, then we get stagnant and we're just, nothing's changing, nothing's evolving.
I think that's a really important lesson because for a lot of people, they go, well, I have to do this. And I work with a lot of authors and every author tells me I have to narrate my own audiobook. My audience demands it. And I was like, I don't think they're demanding it. I don't feel like you're getting that demand because they're like 2 years later, like, oh, I still haven't found time to do it. I'm like, well, all you did is not give an audiobook to everyone who wanted it for the past 2 years. Most people think that writing the book is the job. It's like, no, writing book's the easy part. Wait till you find out what happens after you push publish. Nobody wants it. You have to make them want it. You have to market it. You have to go on every single podcast you can get. You have to hold up your book. You have to tell people about it. You have to constantly grind to build that attention because it's not easy. There's like I think it's 3,000 books a day get uploaded to Amazon. So how are you going to be the one out of 3,000 people notice? People sometimes it's the fun part. And I'm like, the fun part is not the money part. It's hard to self-assess. Like one of the things that I do is I check email once a day.
I love that. Me too. I'm 2 times a day, but there's a timer. So it's 30 minutes, 2 times a day, once at about, this is such a big thing. I do not start with email and I advise everyone to never start with email because email is someone else's to-do list for you. That is what your inbox is. It is not your own to-do list.
You can spend 6 hours a day doing email. Like most people work for companies. I read the study. They said 6 hours a day doing email. I was like, well, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And you have those days where you go, what did you get done today? And they go, oh, I don't know. And I really rage against that because you have to do the 80-20 rule once a week or once a month where you say, what did I do this month and what made money? People say to me all the time, like, Jonathan, you have a huge business. Why do you still do ghostwriting? I was like, well, they pay me at the start. They pay me up front. Like, that's why. Like, everything else I do, I get paid after it works. But it's really nice to get paid a whole bunch of money at once and to have that there because sometimes you have a bad month or things go wrong in another area or you have a family emergency. I like to have a fast money and a slow money in my business. And I think a lot about risk management or risk balancing, which is every time you make a new product, maybe nobody wants it, right? There's that risk. Every time I write a book, my favorite book that I've ever written, my audience hates. They hate it. It's their least favorite. I put more work into that book, more science into it, more effort. And everyone's like, yeah, we hate it. was like, oh, okay. Learn my lesson. My book that I wrote in 1 week is everyone's favorite. So you never know what's going to work because it's a democracy and your customers get to vote.
Yes.
So I'll try to teach people that you want to have a skill that you can sell. And people are like, how do you get clients? I just tell everyone. It's not on my website. I don't have it anywhere because I'm not seeking clients. So I act aloof. I saw that in a TV show and I go, oh, I'll just be like, I ghostwrite, but I'm not looking for clients. And every time someone says, how much does it cost? I just say a bigger number and see what they say. Because I had a person last year, I said $20,000. He goes, oh, you must suck. And he hung up on me. And I go, next person goes, how much is it? I go, 40. And then the next person, I go, 50. This is the only business where you can just double your salary. Like if you went to your boss at any job, they go, I want to raise, how much? Double it. They're never going to do that, right? There's no such thing as a double it raise. They'll be like, what are you talking about? What we have as the owner is all the risk, but also all the reward. People often, I see this a lot when people are complaining about the owner of the business and like, we should all get a share of the profits. It's like, yeah, but you have to take a share of the risk.
100%.
If you're willing to ride in both directions, then absolutely.
Right.
Because sometimes I work on a project and they go, do you want to put money in it? And I'm like, no. And they go, okay, then your upside is minimized. I go, yeah, also my downside. And that's risk management, which is an important part of any business. Is most people who get devastated by a real estate deal, it's the downside, because they're working so much at the upside, they forgot that there's a downside. And a lot of people don't manage the two parts of their business. You have to have a fast money part and a slow money part so that when you need emergency money or you need income, it can come in. And when you want to slowly build it, because just like we talked about, Pinterest can take 6 months or a year to start to get enough traffic that it's really moving the needle. During that time, what I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, just sell yourself out as a Pinterest expert and do other people's Pinterest so you get good at it, get paid to learn. That's how I started. Someone else paid me to do SEO. And I go, okay, I'm going to go buy an SEO course and figure out what to do, what this person just bought. And that's how I deliver my results. It's okay to do that because it puts this pressure on you as well. Like, oh, this person already paid. I do not want to refund them because I've already spent the money. I have to deliver a good result. So you can create a pressure depending upon how you operate. But a lot of people think that they can self-motivate and then they can't, because they are the type of person that if the boss isn't watching, they're like, when the cat's away, and it's like, you have to be the cat. You have to be the business owner. You have to keep track of everything. You have to have your strategy, which is how much money do I need to make every month? How much money is coming in? How much money is going out? What can I do to increase efficiency? And I do like that that's a lot what you talk about because it's a lot what people don't talk about. The final thing I want to ask about is that there's a huge shift now with artificial intelligence tools, which allows, like my team is down to just 2 people. Oh, 3. I hired a Pinterest person. It's down to 3 people and it used to be 20. And there's so much room for efficiency because we can do things faster with tools and softwares that I know of a company with like 6 employees that's doing hundreds of millions of dollars. It's possible to do so much more with less now. A lot of business books that I read are all about like, oh, I've had this employee for 20 years, which to me is like, okay, come on. That doesn't exist anymore. Like everyone job hops. Like nobody's staying at a job for 20 years. I've had people quit. They go, oh, I just bored. I want to work for someone else, not for more money, but just because I'm bored. I want a new challenge, or not even a challenge. I want something more interesting. So how has that changed your approach to outsourcing, building teams now that you can do more with less and there's opportunities for efficiency that don't require an employee, but can instead be like software driven?
Oh, I'm looking for those opportunities everywhere because there are 2 ways to make money. One is you have a new product, you're selling something. Another is you cut costs. Never minimize the fact that cutting costs also makes you more money, because if you're bringing in the same amount of revenue, but now it costs you 50% less to produce that result, you're making more money. And so I'm loving AI and loving using it. And in fact, I'm working on a course right now that I'm really excited about, using AI as your virtual assistant, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't really need them anymore. Like AI can do all of this stuff for you. And you had made a point, which I really liked, where, you hired someone for Pinterest, you hire someone for different things. I really believe in hiring people for their genius zone and not trying to get them to cross over and be multiple things for you. One of the big mistakes we make is like we hire, let's say your first virtual assistant, and you want them to take on everything. You're like, oh, and can you try to do this? And can you do this? And can you do this? And they're costing you way too much money because that's not their strength. So they're slow and they're inefficient and they don't really have the eye. So you're having to follow up and be like, that looks like crap, right? And trying to adjust. And so I learned that lesson the hard way years and years ago, but I really try to only hire someone for one job. Like you are doing Pinterest and you are doing, gosh, why am I blanking right now? What other things people do? It's on my website. Anyways, everybody has their role of what they're doing. I have it on my about because I want people to know, like, I don't want to try to pretend, oh, I'm doing it all. No, I'm not. I'm getting help. And I believe in getting help. But going back to AI is another way that we can get some really incredible help. And so taking the time and the energy to really learn how to use, the different options that are out there and integrate them. I mean, it is incredible what we are going to be able to do. I am saving so many hours with AI with just one of my favorite things about how I'm using it is just the thinking. It sounds kind of funny, but I'm creating a podcast and I'm trying to think about the title, right? And normally in the old way, like I'm sitting there really trying to think up all the things I know about how to create great subject lines that create urgency, that are going to be clickable, that are blah, 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 blah. And now I'm like, ChatGPT, please create 10 subject lines around da, 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 and we know the more we put in, the better the results are going to come back as. And it's like, instead of me sitting there for, I don't know how long, it's seconds and it's back. And I'm like, oh, that one's great. Do a little refining and go. So yeah, I am loving that we can use AI to do less but better. We just need to see that balance between making sure that we're not giving too much. We're still showing up and it's going to be our voice. It's going to sound like us, but yeah, it's pretty great.
That's amazing. So this has been a great episode. It was supposed to be 25 minutes. We've already done an hour, went way over because I had a lot of questions for you. Where's the best place for people that want to listen to your podcast, find out more about what you do, and check out what you're doing on Pinterest?
Absolutely. So first thing I'm going to say, just go over and look up Balancing Busy on your podcast platform and subscribe. And you're going to be able to look at all the episodes, find what you're super interested in, listen there. You can also go to balancingbusy.com. We have tons of free resources and so much there to help to just give everybody the chance to just drop your hours. My goal is for anyone who wants to just show you how to make your full-time income on part-time hours. That's what I've been able to do for the last 13 years, and it's amazing. I love it. And I want to show other people how they can do the same thing.
Amazing. So if you guys don't want to work on the weekends, you want to go to balancingbusy.com. You're going to absolutely love it. Thank you so much for being Leah. This has been an amazing episode. And everyone, we'll see you next time on the Serve No Master podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Serve No Master podcast. Get a free copy of my bestseller, Fire Your Boss, right now on Amazon. Go to servenomaster.com/getfire or just search Fire Your Boss on Amazon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Serve No Master podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next week with more tips and tactics on how to escape the rat race. Please take a moment to leave a review at servenomaster.com/iTunes. It helps the show grow, and more listeners means more content for you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.